out to your regularly scheduled program.
When your camera is made by Kodak, you know it's good.
Tonight, I'd like to show you one of the world's great cameras.
Tonight, I'd like to show you a new idea in picture taking.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up.
I see the picture in my mind's eye, and I give it to you as the equivalent of what I saw and felt.
We choose to go to the moon.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We will never forget that we are analog human beings.
My job is to be authentic.
We all love stories. We're born for them.
Coming to you live from Stratobox Studios in Manila, Philippines.
Hi guys, welcome back to Film Factor Podcast. Are we back? Hi guys, welcome back to Film Factor Podcast. Tonight we are back with Born in Film on air with fellow photographers Scott Davis from Washington DC in the US, Angie De Silva from Quezon City in the Philippines, and Albert Balein from Sharq, Kuwait. And of course, after that, we'll have a new episode of #Masterclass, Visual Storytelling and Creative Composition by yours truly. But before we begin, we'd like to thank each of you for being a huge part of this passionate community. We now have 7,433 members across 81 countries and slowly climbing to 8,000. We are now on our way to our next goal, which is 10,000 members worldwide. So if you have friends or know anyone who would be interested in joining, don't hesitate to invite them over. Everyone is welcome. It is unfortunate that we won't be having any events soon because of the pandemic. We hope that all of you are well and safe. It would be advisable to stay at home and go out only if and when it's necessary. Wash your hands, wear your face masks, face shields, and keep distance from the person near you. Sanitize your deliveries and clean your homes. The key to fighting this pandemic is surviving. Stay healthy, and for those who are sick, fight your way through because we have lots of things planned for the rest of the year. To our frontliners, we thank you and hope and pray that all of you are safe. We hope that through this program, we keep you entertained and well informed. Please do share this live cast so that we get the word out. This isn't only for us, but for you and the many people who are riding out this pandemic. Not too long ago, began a series of online discussions within PhotoNation. The very first one we aired on April 5, where we talked about the importance of printing with Alvin Lee. From there, we met photographers like Australian marine life photographer Darren Ju from the Tales by Light series on Netflix, and Nikola Kostek, a passionate photographer from Belgrade, Serbia. We jumped from landscape photography with Fitz Bore to the life of expat photographers with Arnold Apostol in Singapore. We talked about women and the things they go through as photographers with Al Songkal, a Filipino photojournalist, and Bal Christine, a concept photographer from Israel, and Tran Hong Yang, a Vietnamese nude photographer. From there, we talked to Kat Villarreal, who's into film photography, Jernest Crueta, who's into portraits, and Rick Versosa, who's into concept fine art photography. Last week, we had Michael and Dorothy McKenney, who are into abstract photography, together with Richard Gatmaitan, a fine art portrait photographer, and Jer Naseria, a landscape photographer who's into composites. Throughout this short span, we were able to reach members from different corners of the globe, and the passion lives on. Tonight, we are back with Born in Film on Air, a segment within Film Factor Podcast where we explore the life of photographers and understand their passion as we dive into the details. Let's roll the intro.
It's always been quite interesting.
I'm happy to brief this gathering of motion picture engineers.
Okay. Again, we're live simulcast on IGTV, and if you're on Facebook, don't forget to follow the page, join PhotoNation, and share this live podcast. Joining us tonight is Scott Davis from Washington, D.C. in the U.S., together with Angie De Silva from Quezon City in the Philippines, and last but definitely not the least, Albert Balein from Sharq, Kuwait. Hold on. Are we there? Can you see? Hi guys, good evening. Hi. So again, we have Scott Davis, we have Sir Angie De Silva, and we have Albert Balein from Kuwait. Hi guys, how are you doing? Can you hear me? Can you hear us?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi. Okay, so to start everything off, hold on, let me just maybe we can begin with Scott. So let's hold on, let me just cue Scott in.
Yep.
Hold on. And there. Show. Hold on, let me just pin Scott into frame, and then we're good. Okay. Hi Scott, how are you?
Fine, how are you?
I'm great. So, to start this off, how are you doing now that we have the pandemic continues to spread?
Surviving. Taking it one day at a time. I'm lucky that I can work from home, but I have the option if I want or need to go into the office. So things are okay. So.
Great. And Scott, we see you have a camera with you there. Can you tell us more about it?
Okay, well, this is my Canon 5x7 field camera, and I have my Hermagus Idoscope portrait lens on it at the moment. The camera itself is from about 2000, give or take. It's a really lightweight field camera. All the metal bits on it are aircraft grade aluminum, and the lens is from about 1905.
Wow. So how long have you had this camera with you?
I've had the camera for probably 15 years maybe.
Wow, that long. So. And speaking of your beginnings in photography, can you tell us how long have you been doing photography, and what attracted you to photography?
Well, I got started with photography right after I graduated from college. I was looking for a job, and it was not a good time to be job shopping if you didn't have a technical degree. My degree was in English literature, so I spent a lot of time sending out resumes and hoping to get responses back, and I needed something to do to fill the time. And I thought, well, I really enjoyed painting and drawing, but I don't see that buying subject matter like flowers or things for still life and then having them go dead before I'm done with before I'm done with my painting is a good idea. So I also wanted to do pictures of people, and I don't have the budget to be paying a model to sit for me for hours on end while I'm drawing stuff. I'll learn photography. I can take pictures to use as subject matter and then paint and draw at my leisure. Well, this was back in the late 1990s, and there was no other option but film. And so I set out and I taught myself the basics of wet darkroom photography, and then went and took some classes at the Maryland Institute College of Art in Baltimore. And the very first time a photograph appear in the darkroom tray as it was developing, I was hooked. I said, forget this, using this as a means to an end. It's an end in and of itself. I'm gonna go into photography. And so I started off working with mostly medium format for cameras. That grew into large format stuff. And then long about, I guess it was around 2002, something like that, when digital was really kicking in and the industry for photographic paper and chemistry and film was starting to collapse. There was this big fear that Ilford had gone through a period of financial instability. It looked like they might go bankrupt. They actually did go through a financial restructuring.
Yeah.
Kodak had stopped making photographic paper.
And Polaroid, yeah.
And Polaroid collapsed. Although that was a little bit later. But and there's a whole side story about why Polaroid went under. We don't need to go into it here. Just suffice to say that it failed not because of their business, but because a vulture capitalist looked over their books and said, the physical property you have is worth more than your annual income. I'm going to buy you out, shut you down, and sell your land to make my money. So they were destroyed by somebody looking to make a fast buck, not by their own failure. But what happened was, so I was watching all these things, sort of, these dominoes were collapsing. I said, well, I still love these cameras, and I love working with them, and I want to keep on doing it. I know that there are these historic processes that you can buy the chemistry and do it yourself, and then you're not tied to some manufacturer being around or not being around. So I said, well, I'm going to learn baby steps. I'll learn platinum palladium printing because that I think film's going to be around longer than paper will, but at least I can keep on printing. And so I went, and again, I taught myself the basics of the process, which was harder to do then than it is now because of the internet being so widespread. But I went and got the chemistry, read some books, experimented, made some disastrously bad prints, learned, moved on. And then I had the opportunity to go up to New York and take a class from Carl Weiss, who is one of the most well-known platinum palladium printers out there. Got to learn directly from him, do the process, got a lot better very quickly. And I've continued on with it ever since. And I fell in love with the process because of the quality of the images. Why would I use platinum palladium as opposed to silver or inkjet? Well, if you're familiar with the concept of the zone system and silver gelatin prints, they talk about having a range from zone 0 to zone 10, where you've got 0 being absolute black, 10 being absolute paper white, and then you've got 10 steps in between. Well, platinum palladium, I don't hit zone 0 and I don't necessarily hit zone 10, but instead of 10 steps in between, I've got about 200 steps.
Wow.
So now here's the color is going to look awful big. The monitor is reflecting on it.
Wow.
But here's an actual print.
Amazing.
That I made. And so you can see the gradation of tonality you can get and the richness. With platinum palladium, with rare exceptions, I do not have to burn or dodge to make my print. That's how much range I get into my highlights and shadows.
Wow. It's really something to think about. Yeah. Mm-mm. And Scott, you told me that you did an exhibit, and I believe I have, since we're talking about Palladium prints. Hold on, let me just cue in your photos of the exhibit that you did. Hold on. Hold on, let me just cue those so that we have everything into place. There. Here we go. So Scott, maybe you can talk us through about your exhibit and the things you did.
Yeah, that's the picture of me at the opening for the show. The show was a series of images about historical slavery in the modern landscape. What you're looking at there's a map of Washington, D.C., and then my images are placed around it, and they were all connected with pieces of red string from the photo to where on the map it was taken. This was a project that I began, about 7, maybe 8 years ago. And the idea from it was I was on a history-themed tour with the Smithsonian Institution, and we were looking at Civil War battlefields around Washington, D.C. And one of the stops was this place called Monocacy Battlefield. It's, I don't know, maybe 30 miles north of Washington, D.C. And we are standing on the grounds of the Battlefield Memorial Park. And the tour guide is telling us about the history of the property. And the farm that we were standing on was started by a French emigre family that had fled Haiti in the 1790s. They'd been plantation owners and slave owners in Haiti. And the reason they had to flee was there was a slave uprising, and the slave population was murdering the French because they were particularly horribly brutal slave owners. And so they fled to Maryland, and Haitian slavery worked out so well, they decided to recreate it here in Maryland. At the time, slaves had no rights, basically, whatever. And if you needed legal help, you could go to court if a white person would vouch for you. And the slave owners, this French family, was so horrible to their slaves that their neighbors, who were also slave owners, went to court on behalf of their slaves to try and force an end to the abusive treatment. And they had a relatively small property. They had about 800 acres of land, and they were growing corn and wheat mostly. But they had 90 slaves. Why do you need 90 slaves to harvest 800 acres of corn or wheat? You don't. The reason that they had so many was it was a show of their wealth and privilege that they could afford that many, but also after 1808, importation of new slaves into the United States became illegal. So if you wanted more, you let's say you're a southern plantation owner and you bought another piece of land and you need more people to help work your property. Well, you can either buy ones from somebody else who is selling their existing ones, or you could breed them. And that's what these people were doing. They were running a stud service. You could bring your slave to breed with one of theirs, and then 9 months later, you would have a new baby slave of your own. And standing here looking at this idyllic landscape with gently rolling hills and puffy white clouds and corn growing in the field. I'm hearing this story, and it's just such a shocking disconnect from the story of the place and the place itself that I felt, okay, I have to react to this somehow artistically. And so I started photographing the property. And then that led to exploring, because I knew that Maryland had been a slave state. Virginia, the neighboring state, was also a slave state. Yeah. Washington, D.C. Had legal slavery. I started exploring places that I could go and see now that were connected to it. And that led to this 7-year-long documentary project going around and photographing. And it started off with the easy, obvious stuff of, the big plantation houses that have, that are turned into museums and still have perhaps slave quarters, or they have spaces within the house that were reserved for their enslaved staff and so on. And then that snowballed out into finding more and more locations that may not be so obvious. And I've gone on and photographed places that here in Washington, D.C., that you would walk right by every single day and never think twice about the connection between that place and slavery.
It's very historical, yeah.
So I'd been working on that project for probably 5 years at that point.
Wow.
And I went to, they were having a Photo Week DC event. They were doing this little, well, not so little conference in DC around photography. And most of it was photojournalism, but fine art photography was in there too.
Yeah.
I went to an opening reception they were having for Photo Week, and I'd even kind of tossed around, should I go, shouldn't I? I don't know, I'm not really feeling up for it, but something made me go. And I was over at this gallery space in DC. And while I'm there, I'm walking around, I see a couple people I know, and then I notice this rather elegant woman standing on the back staircase, sort of holding court. And I go and I stop and I listen to her talking for a little bit, and it turns out she's the gallery owner.
Ooh.
And she was explaining the purpose for the gallery. And she wanted to provide space for maybe not so well-known artists or people who just had something interesting to say, to have a place to say it. And I had my elevator speech ready. And I'll tell you, that is the best thing you can do as an artist if you are looking to show your work. Have an elevator pitch ready about your work that you're doing. So that way, and then follow up with having the pitch ready, but going to places and talking to people.
Yeah.
Because I walked in there, talked to her, gave her my elevator pitch about the story of my show, and she said, here's my business card, call me, make an appointment, and bring in the work. I want to see it. And the rest was history. I came in, showed her the work. She was absolutely blown away by it and said, I need to figure out a way to put this on. Give me a little time.
Yeah.
We talked about it a bunch back and forth. Because of the nature of the work and just the DC demographics and climate and everything, she said, it would be kind of awkward for me to give you a solo show on this theme, being this white guy from the suburbs, and here you are talking about African American history. And not only that, but if I showed the entire body of this work up on these walls, it would be depressing beyond belief to have this show up. I need some variety and diversity. So she found maybe half a dozen other African American artists, painters, photographers, sculptors, working in different media, and we pulled together this big show that we launched in February for African American History Month. And but my body of work was the genesis for the show and the centerpiece.
Wow.
I had one entire wall of the gallery right inside the front door for my work, plus a couple of pieces up on the second floor as well.
Which is this one, right?
Yes, that was the main wall.
Wow.
And give great credit to the gallery owner. She came up with the concept of the historical map of Washington, D.C. put up on the wall and arranging the pieces around it that way.
Really good.
So that's another big tip for any aspiring artists is if your goal is to go into a gallery, unless your last name happens to be Leibowitz or Weber, do not try and be a diva and control everything about the gallery experience. The gallery owner is the one who's providing you the space, bringing the people in to see your work, listen to them and work with them. I wouldn't have displayed the work the way she did if I hadn't talked to her. In the end, I'm really glad that I did because it was a very innovative and interesting way to display the work. And I think it helped people give context because, I mean, I can put a picture up on the wall and put a caption underneath it and tell you, but until you see them pointed out on that map and how many of them there are and where they are and that they're everywhere, it doesn't drive the point home.
Yeah.
So.
Really good. And Scott, before we move on, let me try to read some of the comments that we have. We have one from Chucky Matinog. He says he loves the sea lion behind you. And what else? They love your work. Actually, they love what you do, and what else? Yeah, I think they're excited to see more of your work. So speaking of your work, one of the things that you do is you also, in terms of history, you also collect daguerreotypes. So we have some of your daguerreotypes with us here. Hold on, let me just show them up on screen. Hold on, sorry. So we have your daguerreotypes ready here. Hold on. So there. So for those who don't know, Scott, maybe you can run them through what daguerreotypes are and why you collect them.
Okay. Well, I got into collecting daguerreotypes because of my interest in these historical processes. All those little prints that you were seeing up there on that wall are platinum palladium. It's a hand-coded process. You can't buy commercially made platinum palladium paper anymore. So you have to do it all yourself. You take raw paper, you paint the emulsion on the paper, you expose it to light, you develop it, you end up with a finished print. They're all unique. And I can make 24 prints of the same image, but because I'm doing it by hand, they'll all have individual variations. Having gotten into that and learning about that and doing it got me interested in other historical processes. I have learned how to do and still have the equipment for doing wet plate, which is another early historical process. You might be more familiar with wet plate under the names of tintype and ambrotype. The difference between a tintype and an ambrotype is that tintype is on a piece of metal, and ambrotype is on glass. Ambrotypes can be done as either a positive, where you take the image that's on a piece of glass, put something black behind it so that it appears positive, or you can just have it as a negative and then make prints from it. I've also learned how to do daguerreotypes, which is the first commercially viable photographic process. It was developed in 1839 by Jacques-Henri Louis Mandé Daguerre. Frenchman. He announced the process in 1839 at the French Academy of Sciences. He managed to convince the French government to give him a lifetime pension as a thank you for making this process available. The way you make a daguerreotype is you take a piece of copper, you plate it with silver, you polish that piece of silver to a mirror finish, you make it light sensitive by exposing it to vapors of iodine and bromine. You then take that sensitized plate, load it in your camera, go expose it, bring it back. You develop it by exposing it to vapors of boiling mercury. So really healthy and safe, right?
Yeah.
and then you make it permanent by giving it a bath of gold chloride, which stabilizes the surface, reduces the potential oxidation. You still don't want to touch the surface of a daguerreotype because they're very sensitive. The oils in your skin will damage it. Or you can even rub the image off if you press hard enough. One of the benefits of daguerreotypes is that it's probably the sharpest photographic medium available. Because you're dealing directly with molecular silver. It's not particles of silver suspended in an emulsion of some kind. Every single atom of silver is being individually exposed and affected by the process. To give you an example, there was if you go look on the New York Times website, their Lens blog, I think that's where it was. A few years back, they did an article about daguerreotypes, and there was these pictures that someone had taken in Cincinnati, Ohio, in 1845, I believe it was. They were on one side of the river looking across at the city. The original plates that they used to make the image was two sort of plates put together to make a panorama, but each of the plates was 6.5 by 8.5 inches.
Wow.
On one of those plates, in the distance, in the background, there's a building with a clock tower on it. The clock face is roughly, I think, 2 millimeters in diameter on the actual plate. With a magnifying loupe, you can tell what time of day the photograph was taken on that photograph. That's how high resolution this stuff is.
And Scott, since we're talking about daguerreotypes, I believe you have one with you right now, so maybe you can, so that they have an idea how big the daguerreotype.
This is a 6th plate daguerreotype. This is the most common size. So this is how most people would have experienced looking at early photographs in these little cases, and they were about this big. So, and you can see the mirror finish on it. By how difficult it is for me to show this thing in the glare of my computer monitor. But this is what they are. So, having learned about these, and I actually took a class on making daguerreotypes too. So I've actually done it, and it is hard. Making a good daguerreotype is a very difficult thing.
So you could imagine one of the photos that they actually did was to capture the moon, right? Before, back in the day.
That's another famous, very early photograph. The first photograph of the moon is from the 1840s, and I don't remember exactly what year, but.
And Scott, since we're talking about, let's try to read some of the comments that we have been having. Kat Villarreal says, "Thanks for sharing your passion with us, Scott. You're amazing. I love those." From May de la Cruz. Vaughn says, "Great, Scott." Kat says, "The process sounds dangerous, but I believe she's interested in trying that." And again, we'll dive into more of the daguerreotypes later and how they can learn about how the process works. And speaking about learning, Scott, you're also, aside from collecting daguerreotypes and historical memorabilia, you're also an educator. So can you tell us how you became an educator and what's the most rewarding thing about what you do?
Well, I got started teaching photography through Facebook, actually. I had been posting images up on my Facebook feed of my platinum palladium prints. And this guy who I casually knew from other photography things reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm one of the directors at PhotoWorks, which is a photography school here outside of Washington, D.C., and we'd like to have someone who could teach these historic processes. Would you be interested?" And I said, "Absolutely." And so I went out to PhotoWorks and met with him and showed him the work in person. And he said, "Yeah, this is great. Here's how we do business." PhotoWorks is a community arts organization, I guess is the best way to describe it. We don't grant formal degrees or certificates or anything like that. It's for people in the community who want to learn things about photography. And we cater the entire range from, okay, I just got my first camera that's not part of my phone. What do I do? All the way up to people working on large bodies of work and who have very clear visions of what they're doing, but want constructive feedback and community participation in the process of making a body of work. We have wet darkroom space and we have digital darkroom space for people who want to come in and use Photoshop or Lightroom and make prints or whatever, So we actually have a very large wet darkroom. We're one of the few surviving community darkrooms out there. And the rates are actually very reasonable. I think we rent, the wet darkroom is, I want to say it's $8 an hour to use it. And that includes all your chemistry, the equipment, to develop film or to make prints. The only thing you provide is your own finished photographs or your own paper if you're printing. Everything else is there ready to go. The digital darkroom is, I think, $12 an hour, which includes use of the computers. And again, if you're printing, the ink is covered, but you have to provide your own paper.
And yeah, and Scott, you sent us a video. Maybe you can walk us through. I believe this is palladium
This
print.
is making a palladium print. Okay. So I've already taken my chemistry, painted on my paper, exposed the paper, and now you pour the chemistry on. And unlike silver, where it takes a minute or so just for the image to start showing up, with this stuff, it appears instantaneously. You still give it a good 2 minutes in the developer to make sure that all of your shadows and all of your highlights have fully developed. But this is another reason why I love this process, is that moment of magic where you pour the chemistry on and boom, it happens. There you go. There's your image.
Great.
And I believe this is one of two ways to make a palladium print. This is a developing out print. There's a different mix of chemistry that will do a printing out print where as you're exposing, you can check the print, see if it's done, and it'll look pretty much like it is when it's finished, even without any kind of developer. You really just, you expose it. Once it looks right, you put it in a water bath to remove the undissolved, unprocessed chemistry, and then you have a finished print that way.
Great. And Scott, the most important thing about photography for you, and how important is it to learn not just the technicalities of it, but also the roots, the traditional method and its process? How important is that?
Well, I mean, I kind of look at it like, to give it a sort of parallel example. Everyone thinks of Picasso, the modern painter, and he paints these surreal paintings and these cubist paintings of distorted faces and so on. Yeah. And everyone thinks of him as that. But if you go and you look at his early work, the man could paint a remarkably realistic, accurate, and interesting traditional painting. So he had the foundational skills to paint whatever he wanted. He just, once he figured out what he wanted to paint, he painted that. But I think that kind of applies with photography too, that I think it's important to, I mean, even if what you're doing is heavily digitally manipulated, if you don't start with a good foundation, getting to where you want to go is going to be a lot harder. Same with understanding how and why your camera works. If you don't know what an f-stop is, you're not going to be able to properly control your depth of field to get the picture you want. There's a lot of things you can change in post, but if you don't have it, you can't fix it in post. So that's kind of where I come from on all this stuff. And to me, I've gotten interested in all of this historical stuff because it resonates for me. I love the work. I love the 19th century photographs. There are certain aesthetics about them that I want to keep on using. So I feel like I need to know how to do that. And I love the wet processes because I spend my entire day in front of a computer as my day job. This gives me a chance to get away from that and do something that's tangible and creative, and that I've got proof that I did it. You know,
it's something authentic. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very easy for someone to look at an image on a computer monitor and say, but did you do that? I don't know. I can't prove that what's there was yours or somebody else's, or did it ever even actually exist? Well, this stuff, you know, there's it's a physical nature to it. And that's what I love about it.
Great. And Scott, since we're talking about the difference in terms of having it online and physical, how has this pandemic changed the way you teach? And also, as we know, the kind of photography that you teach deals with hands-on activities. How did you, or how did your students adapt to this setup?
Well, you know, of course, all this stuff started in March. And fairly quickly thereafter, the facility where our school is located closed for safety reasons. So we were fortunate in that, because of who we have a relationship with, the owners of the park, they said it's a combination of state, local, and federal government runs the place where we're located. We didn't have to pay any rent for, well, really until I think we start paying it in August. This month we start paying rent. So we've had a lot of flexibility on how to rearrange classes. So we're just starting to get back into physical teaching now. We can do things on a very limited basis with people in the school in person. I think they're really sort of limiting it to about 3 people in the school at a time, students wise. This picture you got up right now, that's from one of my past classes with students holding up their finished prints. So I've had some time to sort of reconsider how I'm going to offer my classes. And I'm going to start in the fall, hopefully, if things continue to improve. I'll do a very small group class for the platinum palladium printing. I don't really see how you can do that successfully remotely.
Yeah.
It
would be
because
hard.
I would have to have every single student buy all the supplies and all the hardware that they would need in order to do it.
Exactly.
Platinum Palladium is a UV dependent process. I need a rich UV light source to expose the print. And if I'm teaching that class remotely and everyone is in their own homes doing it, can't guarantee that they're going to have a black light box to expose in, or that they're going to have good access to sunlight to do it with. And I can't guarantee, even if they have good access to sunlight, that that weekend is going to be a sunny weekend. So
depends. Yeah.
And I kind of need to be in the school for that class. But I've come up with a curriculum for another class that's a longer term class that can all be done remotely, about understanding your personal process of how you make photographs.
Wow, that's good.
That one's going to be discussion based, so we're going to do that over Zoom.
Great.
And I'll give out assignments to people. They can go do stuff, bring it back. We'll do group shares of the work, and have critique and discussion. Awesome. So that part, I think everyone who teaches has had to rethink things in that vein of how do you facilitate that kind of discussion. I think it's a lot easier for someone like me, where I'm teaching largely adults who are all there of their own free will and have paid money to do it and want to be there. I can't imagine trying to teach a group of high school kids who are being told, you must do this now.
Yeah. And yes, speaking about kids nowadays want everything instant. For those kids who are watching now, we know one of the key things about mastering photography is patience. How do you relay this to the children now? I mean, the younger generations who are into film photography again.
Well, I think one of the best things is getting people hands-on and have them do the things. And then they see, okay, yeah, it's not, I pull the cartridge out of the camera, drop it in a bucket, and 5 minutes later it's done. They see, oh yeah, I've got to go do these processes step by step, and they're methodical. And each step is important and has its own value. And then they get the pride of, once the film is developed, they open up the canister and they pull it out and they see the physical end result. It's like they get to have that same eureka, I did this moment that I had the first time I developed film and made my first wet darkroom print. So I think that getting people hands-on to do the process really helps with getting people to understand the value of spending the time.
Great. And it's really different the way you do it by hand, and you utilize all of your senses while doing it. And Scott, since we're almost done, do you have any closing words or your message to the viewers who are watching now? Also for those who want to collect or want to be an educator like you.
What I would say first and foremost is go out there and experiment. Get your hands wet and dirty. Do not be afraid of making mistakes or having failures. Failure is not really a word. It's just a learning opportunity that either you learn from or you don't. So I would say, don't be afraid. Get out there, shoot some film, process it. Even if you ruin it, well, okay, that's a few dollars down the drain. But you learn something. And you get an opportunity to do it again and do it better the next time.
Yeah.
Because if you've done that, then once you've actually made the result, you get to have some real pride in what you've done because you've done it. And you've got something to show for having done it. And even if you never use film and you just shoot digitally, print. Photograph isn't real unless you printed it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
great. And for those who'd like to see more of your works, where can they go? I believe you have a blog, right?
Yeah, I've got a blog, dcphotoartist.com. And I have a bunch of the photos from the Sinister Idol Historical Slavery in the Modern Landscape series up there they've got their own page. And I've got descriptions of detailed descriptions of each of the photographs and why I took it, where it's located, and sort of the history behind the scene. So
great. And future plans? Do you plan on writing a book or exhibit?
Well, I need to finish off the series. I've got a few more images I want to make to round out a few loose ends in the story. And then the end result will be taking all of that, getting together with an editor, and coming up with a finished edited book. This is still in the early days of the process, so I don't have any dates or times or who's going to be doing this. It's probably going to end up being self-published, but so that's book is the long-term goal. I've got some other venues around the DC area where I want to approach to try and show the work again. So
great. And thank you, Scott. Thank you for sharing with us your story, and we hope to see more of your works, especially in PhotoNation. And we appreciate you participating within PhotoNation. The insights are really great, and thank you again. Thank you for joining.
No problem. I'm also I just started working on a new body of work, and I'll be posting a few of those in PhotoNation, but about the experience of living in COVID and the lockdown. So
great. Thank you, Scott. Thank you for sharing with us. And we have other photographers who are joining us. We have, hold on, let me give you okay. So one of our other friends or photographers who are joining us is Angie De Silva. For those who don't know who Angie is, he is a seasoned photojournalist here in the Philippines. And not only does he do photojournalism, he also does creative commercial work. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Sir Angie. Sir Angie, hello. Can you hear me?
Hello,
hi, Sir
friends.
Angie. How are you? How are you now that how are you holding up now that we have the pandemic which continues to spread?
I'm good. Actually, I'm on duty right now, 7 days a week.
Wow. So
I start work from.
In terms of coping up with the pandemic, it's how are you holding up? What's your recent coverage that you did?
The recent coverage was when we went to the free swab testing of the residents of Navotas City. And well, that was my first up close coverage with swab testing. A little bit frightening because of I might get sick or might get infected with the virus. But well, I prepared myself, the normal face mask, shield, even goggles, and disinfectants with me. I always have an alcohol with simple container of alcohol spray with me. And every time I get near a person that I don't know,
it's really
immediately spray. So.
It's really important to protect yourself, especially that you're also a frontliner. And Sir Angie, just to start it off, how did you begin in photography? I believe you started with a film era, right? So can you tell us how you started your career and how old were you when you started?
Well, I was about 17 years old, and I was a working student. I was studying architecture, and then I don't have my family cannot afford to send me to school, so I looked for a job. I had my first job as a graphic artist, and then eventually I applied for a graphic artist job also with the Ministry of Tourism, now it's Department of Tourism. And then I was accepted a few months later. That was in 1981. And then my job as a graphic artist then is to do the layouts of, we call it the local advertising or advertisements. So to make a layout of local ad, I'll be dealing with photographs of local tourist spots. Excuse me. Local tourist spots and deal with copywriters, etc. So I made friends with the photographers because at the time in 1981 we were using photographs way back in the 70s. No updates, no nothing. I mean, they have updated photographs, but they wouldn't share them with us. So what I did is I made friends with the photographers. Well, that includes the boss in photo department. And then I was able to persuade them to let me use the new photographs. And then I asked my boss to let me travel. And then he allowed me to travel. But before leaving, I asked a couple of photographers to teach me the basics of photography, how to expose, everything. So I brought one of their cameras to a trip. And then also with a light reader, because the camera that I brought with me does not have a built-in light reader.
Yeah.
So I bought myself a light reader, and that's how I did it. I came back, was surprised that I had good photographs, better than what they had at the time. So I started using them in my ads. That's how I fell in love with photography.
Sir Angie, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
hold on, sorry. There was a problem with my audio. Anyway, so yeah, you began in photography during the film era, and hold on, let me hold on, let me just try to there. So you began photography during the film era, and you worked for broadsheets, and you also did commercial shoots in between, and some of your works were actually you posted them in PhotoNation, and the principles of film and digital are very different, especially in terms of how you how instant you get the output. Can you tell us, is it an advantage to being exposed to the traditional process now that you're working with digital?
Yes, it is an advantage. Number one is that when I am on vacation, or let's say now as a photojournalist, you, in my experience, it's seldom for me to use in my digital camera. It's seldom for me to use ISO 100. The lowest ISO that I use now is about 800, even if the sun is out. Now, reason why is that the aperture or the depth of field that I wanted is to make sure that the subject is sharp or in focus. Why? Because a bit of difference between photojournalism and commercial photography is that the photojournalism now it happens continuously. You cannot just wait. You have to make sure of your shots. So you have to shoot. If you have the chance, then you can go around and get some more angles or different angles. In commercial photography, well, that's when I would use ISO 100, the lowest in my camera. Now, the only advantage nowadays with the digital versus the film is that during the film you have to wait. You have to wait for the film to be processed before you can see the image. It's might be wrong. Right now, in an instant, you can see it. I mean, before, during the film time, we use what we call the Polaroid or the instant film. Put it in the back of the camera and then shoot, process it for 90 seconds, show it to the client, and then if the client or the artist approves, then you start shooting the film. But still, you have to bracket the shots. Whether you bracket with the speed or aperture, because sometimes aperture is really important, because sometimes the art director would say that I only need the focus in front, or just the label, just the front of the front of the object. So you cannot play with the, or you cannot bracket with the aperture. You have to bracket with the shutter speed.
So in terms of Sir Angie, in terms of advantages, especially you began in film, is the can you say that the aesthetics in terms of composition, in terms of capturing photos, would be an advantage for you since you began during the film days? Is it the same, or what can you say about that?
It's still the same. It's still the same. Composition is still there. I mean, it's still the same kind of composition that we do, just like the old times, the film during the film time. It's still the same.
Great. And in terms of photojournalism, what was your most difficult coverage by far and most memorable?
The most difficult or the most memorable that I did was during the wake and the funeral of the late President Korea. I was one of those who edited the photographs. I was assistant editor and also I was also the one who processed the images of the other photographers.
So that was
they were hired by ABS-CBN and publishing.
So you were doing everything while on coverage, and I believe it's also a marathon coverage, right?
Yes, it is. It was a marathon coverage. And, we would start early morning. At 6 o'clock, it should be at the location wherever it was.
Yeah.
I started from Green Hills in San Juan.
And
And then I was assigned to Manila People.
And we were together with some of the most exciting coverage, especially in the Nazareno, right?
Yes.
Where it's also a marathon coverage. For those who are watching, it's really hard to be a photojournalist, especially that you need to wait for hours
or it depends on the situation, right? So you need to be as fast as you can, especially when something pops up. So that's really it's really.
I had an experience, a bad experience. Maybe it did not become the worst, but it was already the worst experience for me. The last Nazareno, you were there at the foot of the Ayala Bridge, right?
Yeah, we were together
I
there.
I was pinned. My back was on the concrete barrier, and then I was pinned by about 1,000 devotees.
Yeah.
I was pushed back, and I was leaning. My back was leaning on the concrete barrier. The concrete barrier would be about 5 tons. And just had about 5 to 10 degrees. I was afraid that if I would get pinned completely, I got my legs broken.
And being able to experience that, you not only that you need to find safety, it's also to secure your equipment because that's your workhorse, right? That's what you use.
I had 2 cameras. I was holding the one with the long lens in my right hand and the one with the short lens in my left hand. And I put it on my chest. And then I was feeling bad for about 30 seconds.
I myself, I was also pinned during that time because it was the problem really was they changed the way the procession used to be done, and that the people were angry about that, and they tried to push and get away with it. And Sir Angie, now in terms of the pandemic, now that there's a pandemic, how did it affect you in terms of your day-to-day coverage? And for those who want to pursue photojournalism, maybe you can share some tips for them if they want. What in terms of photojournalism, if they pursue this, what are they getting themselves into?
Okay. Since 2017, I was assigned to the Senate. You know, Senate is just a boring place to go to, because you just shoot personalities, you just shoot the senators talking to the resource persons, etc. It is during the floor debates for the sessions. It's just boring. But you have to make yourself, you have to enjoy your job, because that's where I was assigned. That's where, and I have to make do out of it. So
that's
I
a challenge.
Have to find ways to have different images every time or every day. So let's say if there is a session, the session is going on, I have to find a new angle, or I have to study every senator. One good thing is that there are only 23 senators, 24 senators in prison. So there are only 20 senators. Like if you're assigned in the Congress, there are 200.
Lots of
congressmen you have to study. There are only 23 senators, so you have to study every movement. Every movement, their favorite movement, their favorite emotions, when they're, what they do when they're angry, what they do when they're happy, in their how to catch them in their what's called unguarded moments. You have to do it. Now, I think editors are happy with the images that I give them. So,
Sir Angie, yeah. In terms of the pandemic, especially now that you go out on the field, how did it change the way you do photography?
Okay, I'm going to it now. After 3 years, there's a pandemic, and the Senate is closed to coverages, except for Senate photography. And most of the time, well, I think it's almost all the sessions are now online. So most of the images right now are either screen grabs, or if there are senators from in the Senate, there will be a few of them. Now, I was assigned. Now I'm assigned now in Quezon City, and I'm going to go to delicate places like the hospital or the COVID ward or
the hot spots.
Yes, you say. Anyway, what I will only cover are the safe ones. I would only go to the hospital, but I would go to the hospital, but I would just stay outside or the facade or just the reception.
Yeah.
That's why I said earlier that the Botas was done first time up close coverage that I did. Because that was already the fifth day of the testing, and I asked my colleagues who were there before about the condition of the place. It was a gymnasium anyway, and they said that it's safe because there are fans everywhere. So it was good air circulation. So I went and turned up. Safest, the safest thing that I did was just to be in front of the big electric fan. And then I have my long lens. I always use this 80 to 400 millimeter.
Yeah.
So I just zoom in and shoot. But before shooting, I always study the situation.
So we have some of your photos here during a coverage, and it actually it's not for those who don't know. It's also about the people you're with, especially when you do photojournalism. It's not always solo. So you also have to find your group, right, Sir Angie? So maybe you can talk about your socials in terms of your friends who are also photojournalists, how they help you in terms of looking for the immediate shots. I believe Maria, who's with you always, is really looking out for the details that you need to focus on. So maybe you can talk us through some of the advices about being able to be part of groups. Go ahead.
Okay. Let me start with the black and white at the upper left. On the left side is Joe Galvez. He was the chief photographer of GMA News. He's retired now. Beside him is Pat Roque. He was a partner. We were partners in we had an exhibit together. He was photographer for 80 for Associated Press. Now he's retired. The bald one is the present chief photographer of 80. Aaron Fabio. The right photograph, upper right. Beside me is Rene Bidan. He's the chief photographer of Manila Times. That's in Mindanao, in Basilan. We're going back to the port. Now, below left is
You're on attack.
I had an assignment in a Camp O'Donnell. And the Camp O'Donnell is that's where they call the mechanical camp. And I don't have any transportation at the time, so the commander lent me one of the
tanks.
Of their tanks. So I went around with the tanks.
What an experience!
The longer ride, there are three of us. We call ourselves a jam. It's Jerry, it's Angie and Maria. So that's a jam.
Wow.
Right now, the three of us are based in a friend's house. They rented the house.
So they're there with you.
That's the Nazareno time.
Yeah.
Last year. Yeah, last year.
And
Nazareno.
Sir Angie, in terms of being with your pack, your group, can you tell us if how important that is, especially that with your group you have to look out for each other. So
yes, we do.
So maybe you can talk about how important that is.
Very important, because right now Jerry is the only one who has a car, so that's our service. So Maria and I, we live in a village, not far from each other. So they pick us up in the morning. Jerry would pick us up in the morning, come to the base by ourselves. Most of the time, I'm the one doing the cooking, all the stuff in the kitchen.
So
and then they're always busy. They find out if there are some coverages from the day, during the day, and maybe the following day.
Do you have a group chat or?
Yeah, we have different group chats.
So it's really important to be on the lookout for the latest things that's happening.
We especially have to check out with the other colleagues.
Yeah, especially also when you need to verify if something that exploded or something that immediately popped out. You need to verify.
Because several companies or several agencies will send us invitations to cover. Let's say a hospital would shout out to us, "You're doing this and that, please cover." And then before going there, if we have to go there or not, we have to verify if that's true or not. Is it publishable or not?
So we have...
There's a wedding. Yeah.
We have some of your photojourn work here. So maybe you can talk us through briefly about some of the photos that you sent us.
Yes, these are the LSIs, or the localist Baclaran Church. We're waiting there. They were there for a day before.
So these were some
of
the
hours before I went inside this. I don't know how to go on with the light and I saw this lady.
So these are the devotees who are still going to the churches, right?
Oh, these are the LSIs, the locally stranded individuals.
The locally stranded.
We're waiting for their rights. Going to the provinces.
Hey, nice photo.
They're the ones who were.
Who were stranded.
Who were stranded because they were out of the job. The companies.
And they wanted to go back to their provinces.
Yes.
Okay, and then we have another one here. I believe this is a wedding, right?
The priest is a friend of mine. He called me up. And said, "Oh, I'm going to officiate the wedding tomorrow. I want to cover." So I said, I told Maria and Jerry, "You want to?" Yeah. So they did.
Great.
Because they were supposed to get married. They were scheduled to get married in March 26th. The lockdown was in 16. This was in, I think, if I'm not mistaken, on the 6th of May. Because the woman is already pregnant at the time.
Okay, and then the next one is the ABS-CBN.
Yes, the lockdown, the shutdown of the ABS-CBN. This was on the 5th of May. May 5.
Oh, really nice photo.
The day of the shutdown.
The next
they held the candle lighting.
The next one is this one.
That's a warning. There's a warning to,
I thought
to the people. That's a coffin.
Yeah, I
in
thought it
front
was
of
real.
the market. If you don't wear masks, if you don't
if you don't want to die.
Yes,
Nice
that's
one.
a warning to everyone.
Okay, so the next one is this one's great. Ganda.
That's in another church in Mandaluyong. I saw this. I was talking to a friend. I have lots of priest friends. I was talking to the priest in the altar. Then when I turned my back, I saw this woman praying.
The next one we have is this one's really.
This is a double exposure. The supermoon in April. The first supermoon in 2020.
And our
This
last.
is a double exposure because the exposure of the moon and this.
Yes.
The statue, the pillion.
It won't.
It has about 5 stops difference.
Yeah.
It's either you overexpose the moon or you underexpose the pillion.
So you have to make double exposures.
You have to do something about it.
To compensate the light that's coming out of the moon. Okay, and your last photojournalism shot is this one.
Yes, that's in Quezon City Memorial Circle. The city provided small tents that can fit a small family.
Awesome.
Actually, they're also stranded people. They're stranded creatures. They're not patients. They're not infected.
And
so the city government collected them and brought them to the Quezon City Memorial Circle. And there were about 50 small tents there. Every city has their own small tents. What do you call this? Camp.
Great. And Sir Angie,
yes.
Photography has different genres, and knowing you're the type of photographer who can shapeshift depending on the mission or the job order. It may be news or it can be commercial. How important is it to be flexible, especially when pursuing photography as a career?
It is very important because if you don't have a job as a photojournalist and there's a call for a photography service for a commercial or a corporate, you can always adjust, make do out of it. I mean, there are some colleagues, the photojournalist colleagues, who would have or would get a call from someone or a possible client to do some commercial jobs, let's say a product photography, but then they would not know how to do it. They would call me, and I would assist them. And most of the time, I would rent them my studio lights, even the backgrounds, even my studio.
Yeah,
I've done that for several times to several colleagues.
And,
so
go ahead.
It's important that you don't just do one genre of photography. It's important. So just like now, just like everybody else, you cannot be a photographer if you don't have a photograph of a sunset. It's one thing. In the olden days, the figure study or the nude photography is very, very famous to every photographer. So you cannot be called a photographer if you don't have a photography of a body, of a female body or a male body. I was into dance photography, theater photography, or the fashion. I went to fashion.
It's
to
really
products, from
yeah.
food, to packaged products, jewelry.
It's really important to be exposed to the different fields, not just
Yes.
photojournalism. And I believe
And
we have
there are only two things that I cannot do. Okay. I was asked to photograph the skydiving, but no, I cannot.
Yeah, go ahead.
But also the underwater photography. I don't have that equipment. I know how to dive. I mean, I can swim, I can dive. I don't have those very expensive.
Yeah. And talking about being flexible, we have some of your photos here that you sent us. Hold on, let me just pull them out. Where is it? Hold on. Here. So we have some of your photos here. Really good captures.
Yeah.
I believe this is.
I had a client. It was a mining firm located in one of the islands in Bicol. And then we were going back to Legazpi City to get the 8 o'clock flight. This was early morning. This was about 5:30 in the morning. And I saw that scene when we were about half a mile away from the port. I readied my camera. I exposed about 3 shots just to get the right exposure. And then when we arrived I already pictured it in my mind. I took it about 12, 15 shots, 15 frames of that.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, this photo of the Mayon, it's actually a volcano here in the Philippines that it's perfectly shaped, or it's perfectly cone shaped back in the eastern side, right? Eastern side of the Philippines. Okay, so
I had a photograph of that when it exploded last year.
Yeah, you were deployed when it exploded.
Yes.
Great.
I was there. I forgot to send you the photograph.
Okay. And Sir Angie, we have your other commercial photos here. We have some of your photos. Let me show it there. The jewelries. I believe, yeah. And speaking of jewelries,
that was in 1995.
It's film, of course.
It's film. The shot in film.
And that's one of the most. That's one of the most.
I still have.
Yeah.
I still have my camera that I used there.
What did you use?
Mamiya RB67, 127mm lens.
Wow.
And Fujichrome Provia.
Fujichrome is really good in terms of saturation in the photo.
The saturation.
Really and the sharpness. And the sharpness. And
there's about if you can see the reflections. I used on that particular photograph. I also used on the 1600 watt second light.
Wow.
And then 2 big reflectors.
And speaking of jewelries, we also have this one. Wow, this was really nice.
I used 2 strip boxes, two 1600s. Because this particular, this set of photographs, I had to expose, there's a difference between using a flash and a continuous light. With continuous light, can just, my aim was is always to use the smallest aperture, which was 32 in my lens. So with this, because I was using a studio light, my studio flash, I had to pop 9 times.
Wow.
To get the 32.
And that's for those who are watching, that's also one of the most difficult things to do, especially in film when you do jewelries in film. With digital, it's really easy now, right? So it's really hard.
Because in every flaw that you get, just touch it up.
Yeah. With this one, you won't be able to go back there and try to fix that, especially in terms of color and printing it. The right color should
come out, especially if you're doing.
This ordeal. This cost millions of pesos.
Wow.
I had this was taken in the house of the designer, the jewelry designer. It was a big house, and with me are the one son and one daughter of the designer. Was they were the ones deciding the layout, and then 4 burly men as guard. Because this was billions of pesos.
So they really needed to guard the
Yes.
jewelries. And Sir Angie, yeah.
This alone took us about 4 hours.
Wow.
4 hours to set it up. And I had about hundreds of Polaroids.
Just to get
Polaroids to expose.
Oh. Really tremendous work that you need to do. And we also have your other commercial photos here. Some portraits here.
That's Jamie. She asked me to photograph her for her model's portfolio.
I love how soft it came out. Really good.
I did it in Photoshop. So.
Wow, that's really nice. And
but I already pictured it that I wanted it soft. I didn't have a soft filter with me, so just shoot it and then soften it. Polish it.
And this one, wow, this one's really nice.
This was taken for initially for an exhibit. That was Women's Month in 2005. And then during the exhibit, somebody got his attention of the photograph and asked me if it's possible for him to use it for his advertisement and put jewelry, change the earring. I said, okay. So I went to his shop, photographed the earring, and we went back, put it on, erased the original earring, put it on.
Nice.
That's the good advantage with digital right now.
Yeah, and you can actually like what they always say, you can do it in post, right? So, Sir Angie, we have some comments here. We have one from Chucky. He says, "I'm also a photojournalist back when I was in college, so I believe he can relate to your work. It was fun." And as I walked through the street, I saw the reality of light. So that's also one of the things that photojournalists experience day to day. And Sir Angie, we also have some photos here of your exhibits. I believe these are your previous exhibits. Maybe you can talk us through.
Yes, that's the 20th. That was in 2011, the 20th anniversary of the eruption of the Mount Pinatubo.
So you
I was the one on the left, standing. We were just deciding which photos go, which side or whatever. And then on my left is Albert Garcia. That's Albert Garcia, the former chief photographer of Manila Bulletin. And to his left is Boy Cabrido. Boy Cabrido was the chief photographer of Philippine Daily Inquirer. And to his left is Valhan Dumon, photographer then of European Press Photo Agency. I was the one who did all the photographs. I mean, that's not all my photographs, but all the photos came to me and then I fixed them.
And Sir Angie,
these are old and lots of scratches, lots of dust, negatives.
Sir Angie, you were with Sir Albert Garcia when the Mount Pinatubo erupted, right?
Yeah.
And since
I was not with Albert at the time. I wanted to go to the area to Zambales, but I was at that time working for Philippine Star. I was my editor said no, because my bit at the time was entertainment. lifestyle, entertainment, and fashion.
Yeah, and
so I was not allowed to go there.
It's unfortunate we weren't able to have him with us tonight. But for those who don't know, I have a book here. This is actually Time Magazine's 100 most influential photos, and Sir Albert's photo is actually
best photographs in the century.
Yes, and let me just find it here. It's unfortunate he wasn't. I believe his time or his schedule won't. Hold on, I think it's somewhere. There you go. This is actually a photo. Just in relation to what Sir Angie is there.
Yes.
This is actually part of Time Magazine's greatest images of the 20th century, and yes, it's unfortunate that we weren't able to also have Sir Albert Garcia with us here tonight. And Sir Angie,
yes.
Your closing words. Any final advice for those who want to pursue photography or photojournalism and the type of photography that you do, since you also do commercial work?
Well, okay, for those who want to pursue photography, especially photojournalism, don't be discouraged right now just because there's a pandemic and you can't go out. But then you can practice at home, actually. You can try documentation, documenting the people around you, and documenting what they do. It will be a practice. It will be a good practice. And just what Scott said earlier, that do not be afraid to make mistakes. Learn from it. Okay? And to go commercial, well, you have to take advantage right now of the products that are hot. Let's say food and what's hot right now. Right now, the food. Face shields, face masks, whatever needed.
Great.
And then if you have a macro lens, then you can shoot details of anything, including the insects.
And
that's a good practice also of patience and photography.
Yeah, it's really important to utilize what you have, especially now that we have a pandemic. Maybe the people who are watching can try to do some projects at home. And again, thank you, Sir Angie. Thank you for sharing with us your story.
Thank you for having me, friends.
Thank you, Sir Angie. Please stay with us. We'll say goodbye together. Great. Thank you, Sir Angie. And
my pleasure.
Hold on, what happened? Yeah. Thank you, Sir Angie. And our last and our final guest with us tonight is Albert Balein, who's in Kuwait, in Sharq, Kuwait, who does food photography. He's actually one of the most regarded commercial or how do you say it, tabletop photographers or flat lay photographers in PhotoNation. Without further ado, let me introduce our guest. Hold on. Our final guest with us tonight is Albert. Hi, Albert. Albert, hi. Can you hear me?
Hello, sir. Sir.
There. Hi, Albert. Kamusta? Kamusta dyan sa...
Ayos. Ayos naman, sir. Katatapos lang naman ng lockdown.
Tapos na yung lockdown sa inyo?
Yes. Bali, parang ang iniwasan na lang ngayon yung gatherings. Tapos, yung transportation ngayon may limitado lang. Para mga isang pasahero lang per vehicle. So, yun lang yung allowed ngayon dito.
So, in terms of photography, you can still do nakakapag-shoot ka pa din?
Ayun yung isa sa pinaka-advantage ko eh. Bali, hindi man kasi ngayon yung mga online selling, yung mga nagbibenta ng pagkain. So, ang ginagawa nila, nagpapashoot sila din, pinapadeliver nila sa bahay ito. Tsaka, sinushoot ko yung mga products nila.
Wow. And Albert, since we're talking about photography, how did you begin? And
gaano katagal mo na siya ginagawa? Tsaka ano yung nag-attract sa kanya? Ano yung nag-attract sa'yo to do photography?
Nag-start ako noong year 2012. Bali, first time ko na sa Kuwait. Then, ang pinaka-general ko lang nun is yung point and shoot and then random objects lang. Tapos, nagkaroon ng Kuwait ng photography community about food photography. So, nag-join ako doon. So, doon na nag-start yung career ko as a food photographer.
Wow. And we have some photos here. I believe ito yung mga napasamahan mo na groups, right? So, maybe you can talk us about these groups.
Ito yung nagkaroon ng seminar yung mga buong culinary na Pilipino sa Kuwait. Then kami yung nag-conduct ng seminar. And then kami yung tumulong sa kanila para ibigay sa kanila yung kailangan nila about social media.
And,
so kami yung kami yung pinaka-in-charge din sa
workshop.
Sa workshop, yes.
Great. And Albert, you're widely regarded as one of the members of PhotoNation. That's very good in terms of product shots, especially in food photography. Can you tell us gaano katagal mo na siya ginagawa? Tsaka ano yung maganda sa kanya kung bakit mo siya pinagtuloy?
Kasi ako hindi ko hilig yung mag-shoot ng portrait. Hindi ko kasi ugali yung yung mag-utos ako sa model kung ano yung gagawin. So, ang gusto ko lang kasi, mag-shoot lang ako na ako lang yun. Ako lang yung tao, then walang nanonood. Ayun lang yung pinaka-gusto ko. And then, nag-start siya nung 3 years ago. Hanggang sa nagtuloy-tuloy na. Tapos nagtawag sa akin yung mga client. Then, magpapa-photoshoot sila about the strat. So, doon na nag-start yan.
And, gano'ng katagal na? In terms of
3 years na kung sa food photography, 3 years na.
Great. And in terms of food photography, ano yung pinaka nag-attract sa in terms of ano yung nagustuhan mo sa kanya? Bakit food photography? Aside dun sa
ang pinakagusto ko kasi sa food photography o yung product photography kasi yung pagsiset up, mahilig kasi ako dyan eh. Mahilig din kasi ako magluto, then mag-set up. So, ayun yung pinakagusto ko na nagagamit ko rin sa photography.
Great. And yun, since we're talking about food photography, paano, how did this pandemic change the way you do your work? And since you're also into tabletop and flat lay and food, like what you said earlier, it's really big now. In terms of opportunities para do sa mga photographers, mas malaki ba? Mas marami bang opportunities ngayon para sa mga product shots? So yun. Sige.
Ang advantage ng pandemic sa amin bilang food photographer. Mas marami yung mas marami na ngayon yung kompetensya. Tsaka mas marami ng in-demand na photographer na kinukuha. Kasi in-demand pinapadala nila yung mga products na nila, pinapashoot nila. Then parang work from home lang din.
Yeah. Great. And I believe we have some of your photos here with us. Wow, they're really good. We love the colors and how you compose. And so maybe you can talk us through paano mo siya na compose, paano yung mga ginawa mo.
Itong first photo, kasi gumigising ako lagi ng maaga. Itong pinaka-inaabangan ko kasi dyan yung sunrise. So ito yung first photo. So wala akong ibang gamit na strobe o artificial light. So natural light lang yung nasa left. Then yung nasa kanan, parang common lang kasi yung yung garlic eh. So binigyan ko lang siya ng konting tricks para mas ma-appeal dun sa makakita ng photos.
Nice. And yung sa kanan, ano yung...
Yan, sa kanan. Kasi parang lang eh. Ayan lang kasi yung available dun sa kusina ko. So para mas challenging, ginawa ko siya ng ibang pakulo para ano na.
Really creative.
Para patok sa panlasa ng mga makakita ng photos.
Ganda. And we love the colors. Really good. And our next one, ito, tatlo sila.
Yan.
Ganda nung first one. Yan, tsaka yung...
Itong first photo, walang ano yan eh. Walang manipulation yan eh.
Wow.
Para ano lang yan. Nilagay ko lang siya sa aquarium.
Mm-hmm.
Then, ilaw lang siya sa gilid. One light. Then, aquarium na binaligtad ko lang. So, yun na. Ayun yung result na. Parang i-text niya lang isa falling beans.
Wow. Ganda. And yung
itong second photo, ayun yung kuha ko sa iPhone 5s.
Oh.
So, kasi may mga nagtatanong sa akin kung ano ba yung device na ginagamit ko. Lagi nilang sinasabi na high-end ba yan o flagship ba yan. Lagi ko sinasabi na huwag kayong bumasi sa ganda ng camera. So, kailangan din creativity.
Yeah.
So, dito ginamit ko natural light lang naman.
Wow.
Yun lang, iPhone 5s.
And
then, yung sa third photo, optical illusion siya eh. Bali, ang dalawang colored paper lang. Nakapatong sa black paper. So, yun siya. Yun yung result na parang optical illusion na nakapatong sa table.
Ganda. Really good photos, Albert. And
thank you, sir.
Let's try to read some of the comments that we're getting. Wow, ang dami mong friends na nanonood. Ayan. Sabi ni Ellie Locoy, one of our featured members also. Sir Albert, nasa train pa ako pero ito ako nanonood. Makita ko lang kapag iyan mo. Shout out daw sa kanya. Tapos yung pinsan mo nanonood din, si Wella. Yan. Tapos, sabi ni Kat says, saan ba yun? Yan. Isa sa pinaka-humble at never naging madamot mag-share ng knowledge on photography.
Thank you.
And sabi ni Ellie Locoy, hindi ko marinig, kainis na train to. Hindi ko marinig. Ayan. Tapos, sabi ni Ika, inaabangan ko English eh. Nagtatagalog na ako.
Oo, Pilipino tayo eh.
Tapos, ano pa ba? Yan. Gusto nila, yung illusion photo, nasa 9gag yun. Nasa 9gag daw yung photo mo? Tama ba?
Yes. Tsaka Reddit.
Oh, wow. This one. Wow.
Yes. Saka marami ding nag-PM sa akin na gagamitin daw nila for educational.
Oo nga, ang ganda eh kasi it's really something to look out for. It looks like an artwork. Ganda. And Albert, in terms of yun nga, food photography, ano yung pinaka-challenging na nagawa mo na food photography shoot para sa iyo?
Ang isa sa pinaka-challenging sa akin yung itong nagkaroon ng pandemic. So, totally lockdown. Tapos, wala kaming trabaho nun eh. So, kailangan namin ng income. So, yung mga kaibigan ko nagre-refer sa akin na nagsushoot ako ng products, ng goods. So meron ako isang client na may karinderya. Ang nangyari, nagpadala siya ng meal, pinadala sa bahay, tapos hindi ko na-expect yung pagkain niya is sira na. Bali, ang nangyari, yung sabaw, natapo na, yung gulay, overcooked na.
Ako.
Tapos, ayaw ko namang mapahiya yung client. Ang ginawa ko, kinain ko na lang siya. Then, ang sunod na ginawa ko, nagluto ako ng sarili kong recipe. Tapos, ang hindi alam ng client na hindi yun yung luto. So, isa yun sa pinakataling din sa akin na ako na yung nag-shoot, tsaka ako na rin yung nagluto para dun sa products niya.
Good. So, and Albert, it seems the pandemic, andito siya eh. Mukhang matagal pa siya bago mawala. Any advice? Ano yung advice na pwede mong ibigay para doon sa mga gustong i-pursue itong career na to? Tsaka ano yung mga kailangan nilang gawin para maka-attract na mas marami pang clients? Kailangan ba nila gumawa ng portfolio? Ganyan. Ano yung mga advice?
Yes. Number one talaga yan. Mag-shoot lang sila ng mag-shoot. ipunin nila yon kasi balang araw, pag nagkaroon sila ng client, pwede nilang gamitin yun as portfolio sa client. Tapos, silang sawang mag-share, tsaka lagi lang silang mag-research, magbasa, manood ng mga about dito sa food photography. So, ayun.
Great. And also, Albert, since yun nga, minention mo kanina na gumagamit ka ng smartphones like yung iPhone mo.
Yes.
Yun.
Mas.
Oo. In terms of doing product shots, and as the saying goes, wala yan sa pana, nasa Indian yan, di ba? So, how important is equipment over creativity in this type of work?
Kung ang photography ay hobby mo lang, doon ka sa creativity. Pero pag nagkaroon ka na ng client, kailangan mo rin naman kasi mag-upgrade ng equipment para sa good quality ng output. So iba pa rin kasi talaga yung may proper equipment kung ikukumpara mo sa smartphone. Malaking pagkakaiba kasi yun. So parang kailangan mo lang din i-balance creativity tsaka proper equipment.
Great. And ito, marami na namang comments yung mga nanonood. Sabi nila, nasa lahi talaga ang talent. Sabi ng pinsan mo. Tapos, sabi ni Von, share din ang TikTok ni Sir Albert. May TikTok ka din daw. Tapos, sabi ni May, best mentor si Sir Albert. Then, sabi ni Ika, singer ka rin daw. Totoo ba? Singer ka din daw. Yun. Tapos, sabi ni JP, sana daw magaling din siya magluto. Yun, Albert, for tips mo para sa kanila, doon sa mga nanonood sa atin, any tips for those who want to pursue and try tabletop photography or flat lay, given that they have limited resources at home? Ano yung pwede nilang gawin dun sa mga gamit na meron sila ngayon? Yung available.
So, ang may advice ko lang naman sa kanila, kung ano lang yung kung ano yung bagay na meron sila, kung ano lang yung smartphone na ginagamit nila, low-end or high-end o camera na pang-beginner. So, magagamit na lang nila yan. So, research lang sila, magtanong lang sila sa mga professional, hindi sila ng ideas. Ayun lang yung may advice. Tsaka yung, huwag nilang bigyan yung limitation sa sarili sa pag-explore ng photography. Kasi masyadong malawak yan. Kailangan lang tuloy-tuloy lang yung passion.
Great. Thank you. And your future plans, Albert, paano sa kanila pwedeng kontakin kung gusto nila magpagawa ng flat lay or product shots, and sa nila pwede makita yung mga works mo?
Pag mga pang-wholesome lang naman. Tsaka pang inspiration, sa Instagram ko na lang kasi. Nila makita yung mga works or mga art ko. So, jpeg.albert. Wag sa Facebook kasi puro memes lang ang meron.
Okay. And again, thank you, Albert. Salamat sa pagsali sa amin ngayong gabi.
Thank you.
Thank you. And again, let's bring back our guests. Hold on, what happened to ours? So let's bring back our guests. Again, joining us tonight, or those who joined us tonight, is Scott from Washington, D.C. in the U.S., Sir Angie from Quezon City, and Albert from Kuwait. And again, do you have anything to say? Anyone to greet? Let's begin with Scott. Anything you want to promote or say hi to those who are watching?
Hello to everyone watching, and thanks for watching.
Thank you, Scott. Sir Angie, you have anything to promote, or where you'd like to greet anyone? I think he's having some difficulty in terms of audio. Sir Angie, can you hear me? Okay, let's move on to Albert first. Albert, anyone you'd like to greet or promote?
Yes, sir. Nagpapabati nga pala yung group na okay na. Si Bon, si Essence, si Ezekiel, si Jan, si JR, si Erwin, si Eman, si Kat, si Luna, si Len, si Giselle, si Ana, si Iya, at saka sa mahilig din sa film. Sila Jessica, si May, si Matthew, at JP, Ira, at si Sherbal at Marvino. Tsaka yung mga mobile photographers. Tsaka kay Jam pala, special mention, get well soon. Yun lang, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sir Angie, let's go back to Sir. Can you hear me, Sir Angie?
Yeah, I was having a problem with the wireless.
Okay, so anyone you'd like to greet or anything you'd like to promote before we say goodbye?
Life goes on with or without the pandemic. Just to find out a way to photograph anyway. So don't just stay in one place. If you are in a lockdown, that's bad. But don't just stop photographing. Just photograph anything wherever you are.
Great. Again, thank you for joining us tonight, Scott, Sir Angie, and Albert for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Again, thank you.
Good luck, friends.
Thank you. Again, thank you, everyone. This has been Born in Film on Air. My name is Franz. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to hit subscribe on our YouTube channel, and this will also be on Spotify. Just search for Film Factor Podcast.
It's always been what's interesting to me.
I'm happy to greet this gathering of motion picture engineers.